Go please. Divorce. She wants to divorce Shen Yi. Grumpy, paranoid, fake, poor real boss, Shen Yi X, spoiled eldest lady, Lu Wan Wan sweet and cool text. The soil is sweet. The soil is sweet. Key points: the male lead and the female lead can scold, but the author himself does not allow scolding. The summary is, you can scold anyone but you can't scold me. Content label: travel through time and space. Search keywords: protagonist, Lu Wan Wan supporting role. Others. A woman dressed as a president. Lu Wan Wan woke up in a sharp noise, his slender wrist was held tightly. Divorce. Must divorce Shen Yi. A shabby kid still dare to show you his face? What is he? Don't you know how to look in the mirror? The beautiful woman in front of her said angrily, and then she said, late night, look at your haggard look now. It's all bones at the touch of her body, and there are still wounds on her arms. Lu Wan Wan slowly sat up from the bed, her eyes were dull for a long time, before she recovered slowly, her vision gradually became clear. This room was her bedroom in Lu's house. Lu Wan Wan's whole person is not very good. She is wearing a book, and this is the third time. She died twice before and hasn't gotten out of this book yet. She passed into a domineering president named the Giant Emperor Xiao lightly loves. This is a slap in the face of the thunderous dog blood. Lu Wan Wan is the spoiled eldest lady of the Lu family. She is very beautiful, with oval face, white skin and big eyes, and when she looks at you pitifully, she can't help but feel soft. The male protagonist Shen Yi is the youngest son of a wealthy family in Beijing. Shen's father derailed, and Shen Yi's mother secretly took him away under the circumstances of extreme resentment. Since then, no news has been heard. Miss Lu met the male protagonist in the first year of high school. She was attracted by the flower-like temperament of the male protagonist Jailing. The 17 or 18-year-old male protagonist is extremely handsome, has a flawless face, beautiful features, and extremely white skin. A pair of cold eyes, sharp nose, delicate eyebrows. Miss Lu fell in love with him almost at first sight. When she first saw it, she was attracted by his appearance and temperament, and she fell deeply into it and couldn't help herself. The next day Miss Lu began to chase the male protagonist. As a miserable young master, the male protagonist was naturally very pitiful. Not only did he live in poverty, he was often squeezed out by the people in the school. Ms. Lu gave a period of diligence and then got her wish to catch up with the male lead. Until they graduated from university, the two got married. And she lived in a beautiful environment when she was a child, and her personality was not as innocent as she showed. Miss Lu is an out-and-out white lotus. After a few months of poor life with the protagonist, seeing him become more and more unpleasant. In addition, she has made a lot of young talents, and she began to sultry outside. I go home late every night, and sometimes I don't even go home. Just after Shen Yi told Lu Wan Wan that he had resigned from the original company, Miss Lu looked at him with disgust, and asked for a divorce without nostalgia. And when the male protagonist was most desperate, he and Xin Huan stepped on him severely, deceived his plan, bought his colleagues, and forced him to desperately. But at this time, she still didn't know that Shen Yi had been found and recognized by the Shen family. The hero was originally a black briquettes, and Lu Wan Wan had become a catalyst for him to blacken into carbon. He has been dark and distorted since he was a child, and he has been out of control since then. The male protagonist trampled the Lu family to death just like trampling ants to death, causing it to go bankrupt. Miss Lu could no longer lead the luxurious and extravagant life she used to, and died in silence in a life of poverty and sickness. When Lu Wan Wan wore this book for the first time, she didn't even panic in her heart. At that time, the plot had just come to chase the male lead. The series of things she did to die later have not yet begun. Lu Wan Wan tried his best to avoid those things, worked hard, and was single-minded to the male protagonist, but after getting married, the male protagonist shut her up in an apartment. Sure enough, the neurotic world cannot be understood. This level lasted more than 10 years. She had never stepped out of the door of that apartment once, and she could only wear the pure white pajamas he had prepared and waited for him every day. Who can stand this kind of day? So one night, Lu Wanwan, Shen Yi, stole the key to the window from him, opened the window with his drunkenness, closed his eyes, and jumped out of the 10-story apartment without hesitation. She thought she could be free from the world in the book, but when she woke up she found that she was still in this world. The second timeline also started from high school. Lu Wanwan and the male protagonist Shen Yi have become lovers. She instills the concept of harmony and friendship in Shen Yi every day, trying to influence his distorted character with care. After graduating from university, when Shen Yi proposed to get married, Lu Wanwan refused directly without even thinking about it. Then she was locked up by Shen Yi again, this time in a dark basement. The door was locked tightly, and there was not even a window. Since she can't get the sun all year round, her skin is almost white and glowing. Every time there was a little movement by the door, she hid in the corner in fear and curled up. Lu Wanwan remembered that she had been in the basement for about 2 months, and then she accidentally fell in the bath and fainted. At that moment, she thought that she could finally get rid of the broken book. Unexpectedly, when she opened her eyes again, she was still Lu Wanwan in the giant Emperor Shao Qing love. And at this time she was married to Shen Yi. She wanted to curse. Stupid author trash. She calmed down for a long time, suppressing the urge to lift the knife. Her eyes moved to the woman sitting by the bed. She spoke, her voice still a little dumb, "Mom, I'm fine." Mother Lu became even more angry when she heard this, opened the hem of her dress, pointed at the bruises on her body and said, "It's okay. It's okay? Look at the injuries on your body. I've been hitting her since childhood. I haven't beaten you, but Shen Yi dare to do this to you? You bully you out of the cold, tell me who you are married to." Of course, the injury on Lu Wanwan's body has nothing to do with Shen Yi. It was caused by the original owner who accidentally fell off the steps when he went out to drink for pleasure. She lowered her head, her face was pale, biting her lower lip cowardly, and she looked like she had been bullied to death by Shen Yi. She deliberately lowered her voice and said ambiguous words, "Mom, I don't blame him." After experiencing 2 lessons, Lu Wanwan has already figured it out clearly. It is better to follow the original plot of the giant Emperor Shao love. What's the matter with no money? At least he can get a divorce from the male protagonist, that snake disease, and stay away from him. Very nice. Lu Wanwan's words were tantamount to adding fuel to the fire. Mother Lu's face turned pale, and she poked her head hard with hatred for iron and steel. "Why are you so unbelievable? On your terms, even if you are. After the divorce, you will still choose the man in the future." Lu Wanwan squeezed out 2 hypocritical tears and pulled her mother's sleeve. "Mom, I love him, you let me think about it again. I'm still a little tired and want to sleep." Mother Lu looked at her with a sad face, and didn't want to push her further. "You should rest first." "Mom, if Shen Yi tonight..." Hesitating to speak and stop seems particularly unspeakable. "He dare to come and pick you up tonight? I will never let him into your door. Don't worry, how could our Lu family's baby be bullied by him? Mom will help you clean up his meal." Lu Wanwan bit his lip, seemingly distressed. Don't be too cruel to him, my injuries are not serious. Splashing dirty water is also a technical job." Just a few words or so made her mother misunderstand Shen Yi. How good it is. Mother Lu interrupted her, gritted her teeth and said, "Stop talking, I have a sense of measure." After Mother Lu went out, the exhaustion between Lu Wanwan's eyebrows was swept away, her eyes were shining, she rolled twice on the bed, and she was about to laugh happily. This kind of day when you don't need to look carefully at the male lead's face and coax him to spoil him is really great. That's so cool. In winter, the trees planted in the yard were covered with layers of snow, and a gust of wind shook the branches, and the snowflakes fell. Lu Wanwan opened the window for a while, her delicate face flushed red by the wind, she stretched out her hand, and cold snowflakes fell on her fingertips. How sweet is the taste of freedom! Lu Wanwan was in a good mood, closed the window, rolled back to her bed, and took a nice nap tightly wrapped in her little quilt. She had a dream, but the dream was very unpleasant. In the dream is the apartment where she has stayed for more than 10 years. In the dim bedroom, where no light could penetrate, the bedroom was slightly cold, and the door to the room that was tightly closed was suddenly opened from the outside. The leather shoes fell on the floor with a crisp sound. The man stood by the door against the light, with fair skin, and his dark pupils stared at her who was shrinking on the bed motionless. He seemed to have just finished taking a shower, and his dark hair was dripping with crystal drops of water. He slowly walked in, spread his knees, knelt down on her waist, and gently clasped her chin with cold fingers. With a laugh, he said, "Will you stay here for the rest of your life?" Then Lu Wanwan was awakened in a cold sweat. The hero is not an individual. Neurosis, not saved. There was a slight noise from downstairs. Lu Wanwan walked down barefoot and gently opened the door of the room. From this angle, he could not see anything except the corridor. She walked barefoot on the carpet, silently. From the stairs on the second floor, you can clearly see what happened downstairs. Shen Yi is standing in the living room. He should have just got off work, with a suit and leather shoes and expressionless face. But Shen Yi looks really good looking, just where he stands without saying a word is like a painting. Lu Mu embraced her hands, glanced at him coldly, and snorted in a very bad tone, "What else are you here for?" Shen Yi frowned slightly, his voice was clear, and he replied, "I'll take her home." The author has something to say, the new article opens a hole. But this one really doesn't have any glass slag. The male protagonist is fake and well-behaved, really sick, charming and gloomy, he. I like little perverts. It's basically a scene where love is really fragrant after marriage. Sweet love story. Everyone has a lot of fun. The Pi ball. Oh. I'm a little happy to open a text. See you tomorrow. Mother Lu smiled coldly when she heard what Shen Yi said, her tone was rather bad. "I haven't gone to you to settle the account yet, I didn't expect you to come and take her home." When Mother Lu saw him, she thought of her daughter's injuries. She was so angry that she naturally didn't look good at him. She followed up and said in a weird manner, "I dare not let my daughter go home with you. It's all good things you did? What's the point of asking to come here now? It's just pretentious, I tell you, tomorrow you will go to the Civil Affairs Bureau to divorce me." Shen Yi raised his eyes, his indifferent expression moved slightly, and asked in a low voice, "Is she hurt?" Mother Lu felt that Shen Yi's pretending to be stupid and stunned really acted like him. She swept his eyes around him twice, thinking that this man looked serious, not like someone who would beat his wife at all, but the youthfulness on his daughter. Zizi's scars are not fake. Not waiting for her to speak sarcastically, Lu Wanwan, who was standing at the top of the stairs, slowly went downstairs. She was wearing a nightdress with the hem of the skirt only reaching her knees, showing straight white and tender calves, her collarbone was clearly visible, and her slender, white neck let her when people see it, they want to take a bite and taste what it tastes like. The reason why Lu Wanwan came down was because she was afraid that her lie would be exposed by Shen Yi. She took her mother's arm, frowned, and gestured to help the wind and the weak willow. She seemed to be crying in the next second. She tugged at her mother's clothes and said, "Mom, don't say it. Really. It has nothing to do with him." This concealed explanation, coupled with Lu Wanwan's pitiful expression, made Lu's mother feel that her daughter lied to her because she wanted to protect Shen Yi. Mother Lu patted her daughter's hand to comfort her, and then dropped a few words loudly, "Divorce. Divorce me." Shen Yi looked particularly pitiful at this time, thin, pale, With slightly curved thumbs, he opened his lips and slowly said, "I." Mother Lu interrupted him impatiently, "I didn't want to agree when you got married. Our Lu family is considered a rich family. We live in a villa and drive a luxury car. We also have several companies under her name. But what about you? Poor and white, and now it's just working in a small company. We were suffering from following you late in the day. Now you are beating and scolding her again. How can I rest assured to give my daughter to you?" Shen Yi gave a sigh of relief, raised his eyes and looked at Lu Wanwan lightly, passing the scar on her arm, hoarsely, and asked, "Should I hit her?" Lu Wanwan was often seen by Shen Yi with this gaze before. Shen Yi looked carelessly and didn't care about anything. In fact, he was very vengeful. Since he didn't intend to please this man humbly this time, Lu Wanwan was rushing to get a divorce, so he had no worries. She tried to squeeze out 2 tears, sniffed her nose, and complained, "Mom, he didn't mean to hit me on purpose. He has done it once or twice since getting married. I think he will definitely change." Lu Wanwan took advantage of this opportunity to pour dirty water on him. It would be better to destroy the beautiful image of his first love in his heart, recognize her original appearance of White Lotus, and then decisively divorce her. Only in this way can she truly stay away from Shen Yi's neurosis. This is already the 2nd time. Mother Lu was incredulous, raising her tone and screaming. Shen Yi glanced at Lu Wanwan, the corners of his lips were slightly upward, and he smiled invisibly, and then returned to his indifferent complexion. He said, "It is indeed the 2nd time." Both Lu Wanwan and Lu Mu were stunned, but he didn't expect to recognize them directly. Immediately afterwards, Lu Wanwan heard the man in front of him say, "The 2nd time I was drunk and fell from the wound when he fell down the stairs." Lu Wanwan almost didn't squeeze the expression on her face, and wanted to rush up to yell at him, "Shut your mouth." Lu Mu hates people who drink the most in her life, especially those who are drunk. Mother Lu's only brother died of drunkenness. His death was extremely tragic. After getting drunk, he drove on a high speed and slammed into the wall near the entrance of the tunnel. The front of the car was completely plunged into the wall, and when the car was pulled out with the car, it was already completely unrecognizable. When Lu Wanwan was drunk at university, she almost had an accident, so Mother Lu completely forbid her to drink. What Shen Yi said really pinpointed his lifeblood. Mother Lu turned her head and glared at her daughter, "Do you still dare to drink? I think you are going to die." Lu Wanwan bit her to death and refused to admit it. Shen Yi paused, and said slowly, "Mom, if you don't believe it, you can watch the surveillance." He lowered his eyes, lowered his voice, and smiled bitterly, "I am too strict in my control, and it's annoying. I'm getting angry late." Since Shen Yi said that there is surveillance, he must have surveillance video in his hand. Lu Wanwan didn't argue anymore, quickly put away his tears, and took the initiative to hug him, with water drops in the corners of his eyes, and said in a pretentious tone, "Yi, I was too self-willed before." Mother Lu looked at both of them, her head aches. For a while, I couldn't understand what happened to their little couple. Shen Yi said, "Go home. I'll chant back, who is afraid of who?" Next, the school grass who had a crush on Lu Wanwan from high school should come to her door. She only needs to follow the plot to get rid of Shen Yi and divorce him smoothly. Lu Wan packed up 2 boxes of luggage at night, filled with beautiful clothes and jewelry. She stood in front of the closet, her face tangled, "Oh, these clothes are out of season. I really don't want to wear them anymore. A piece of clothing is not very valuable." She turned her head and smiled sweetly at Shen Yi who was standing by the door, "Yi, you can help me take these clothes and throw them into the trash can. She is so greedy for vanity. Extravagant waste." Back then, the original owner was able to catch up with the male lead because she pretended to be a sweet and innocent little white flower, and Shen Yi happened to like such a little white flower. Now Lu Wanwan was about to tear off his mask in front of him. He. Lu Wanwan did not see an expression similar to disgust on Shen Yi's face, but this man was always happy and angry, and he couldn't see his anger. The man walked forward obediently, put all the clothes she didn't need into a bag, never sloppy, and threw it directly into the trash can. He doesn't feel distressed. Lu Wanwan feels distressed when he looks at it. Lu Wanwan thought very unambiguously. After a while, she sent a text message to her mother to pick up all her clothes. Although it has been married for a year, Lu Wanwan still feels that Shen Yi probably does not have much affection for her. She can only see the scary look in this man's eyes when she is in bed. Lu Wanwan sat in the co-pilot and glanced sideways at the man beside him. The cuffs were slightly rolled up, revealing a thin and white wrist bone, his chin was slightly shrunk, his black hair was fine and soft, his contours were delicate, his eyebrows were beautiful, and his lips were thin, slightly squeezed. The whole body was chilly, and he looked like a cold beauty. Lu Wanwan remembered that when he saw Shen Yi for the first time, he fell in the alley, his face was sickly white, curled up in the corner, his eyes were cold, pitiful and fragile. Lu Wanwan silently retracted his gaze and glanced out of the window. The car happened to pass a jewelry store, and her heart moved slightly. She stretched out her white fingers, and the space above her fingers was empty. She pretended to sigh, and then said, the university roommate just got married a few days ago. The diamond ring on her neck and the necklace on her neck are worth 30 million. I also want a pair. She looked at Shen Yi with a smile, and said angrily, Yi, can you buy me a pair? Okay. Lu Wanwan said this deliberately, and of course Shen Yi can't afford it now. The book The Rich and Younger Loves Lightly gives the hero a tragic youth who smells the tears of sad listeners. After his mother found true love, he abandoned him. After attending junior high and high school, Shen Yi was isolated by the school people and fell in love. As a result, Miss Lu, who was in love with the white moon for the first time, stabbed him with the little white face outside, and built him up hard. The small company went bankrupt. Shen Yi has not yet returned to Shen's house. Lu Wanwan feels that the apartment and car he bought when he got married has almost spent his savings. As for the 30 million jewels she mentioned, she could not afford it even in her dreams. Shen Yi pondered for a long while and asked, what do you like? The question is as if you bought it. Lu Wanwan coughed twice, oh, I really like the ruby necklace. Not only does it look good when I wear it, but other people will definitely be envious and jealous of me when I look at it. Shen Yi, look at me. I am such a vain person. Shen Yi nodded, I see. Lu Wanwan tried very hard to find some clues on his face that he hated him, but there was none at all. She was a little discouraged. After getting out of the car, she glanced at his car and curled her lips. When will we replace this broken car? It will be shameless to drive out. It's a shame. Lu Wanwan's words were tantamount to hitting Shen Yi in the face, both overtly and secretly despising him for not having money. The protagonist is so smart that he will not fail to hear it. The steps at Shen Yi's feet paused, and his reticence was brought to the extreme. Okay. What good? Rereading the file for the third time, Lu Wanwan really couldn't understand what Shen Yi was thinking. It was close to 9 o'clock in the evening when he returned to the apartment. Lu Wanwan was a little tired, took off his high heels and went directly into the bathroom barefoot, took a hot bath in comfort, and went out wrapped in bath towels. The man turned his back to her, took off his suit jacket, only put on a white shirt, raised his hand to loosen his tie casually, heard her noise, turned around, and stared at her motionlessly. Shen Yi's appearance was a bit scattered, his eyes were narrow, and his apple was slightly squinted. Lu Wanwan heard him say, "Put your pajamas on." Oh. She had forgotten that the two of them were husband and wife, and they had lived in the same bedroom a long time ago. Lu Wanwan's ears were pink, and she pretended to be calm and picked out her pajamas from the closet. She desperately discovered that this pajama was Shen Yi's favorite pure white. It is estimated that he bought it. During the many years after being imprisoned, Shen Yi whispered in her ear many times, saying that she liked her appearance in a cotton and white skirt the most, and she liked the way she was delicate and could only cling to him. Every time she wanted to leave and was caught back by him, Shen Yi said with a smile, "It was you who provoked me first. You said you liked me. It's late, you can't leave if you like me." Late, okay if you don't go out? They will lie to you, and only I am the person who treats you best. Isn't it okay if you just leave me alone? Lu Wanwan really has a psychological shadow on the cotton and white night dress, and she wore it awkwardly, her long black hair randomly scattered on her back, covering the large delicate and white skin on the back of her neck. Her steamed face was pink and translucent, and the dim light reflected her face more clearly. Her features were delicate, shy, and timid, and full of moving. Shen Yi silently did not open his eyes, lowered his eyes, the look in his eyes darkened and darkened. The author has something to say. Late night, I am a coquettish ex-goods. Divorce me soon. See you tomorrow. Thank you mine bosses. Come. Leave a word. Lu Wanwan played the role of a poor little white flower who had suffered from marital torture and grievances, and as expected, it evoked the deep pity of Lin Su and, by the way, satisfied his self-esteem of wanting a hero to save the beauty. When the Lu Evening News reported the address, Lin Su's eyes still flashed with disdain. He asked, "Did you live here for the past few years when you were married?" She lowered her head. "Yet." Immediately, Lu Wanwan showed a standard White Lotus smile. "Although it's just an ordinary apartment, the public security environment is okay. In the previous 2 times, she was locked in this apartment, and the doors and windows were locked." Lin Su looked at her with distressed eyes and said, "You shouldn't live in this kind of place. Shen Yi is really too shameless. How can you be willing to let you suffer so much? If you had..." Lu Wanwan interrupted him in time. "Here." Lin Su stopped the car and went around in a circle to open the door for her. After Lu Wanwan got out of the car, he pulled a sweet smile and said to him, "Thank you so much." "You're welcome, I'll take you upstairs." "No, it's not good to be seen by him." Lin Su looked down on the poor and gloomy Shen Yi before, but now it seems that he is not doing well again, and he feels that he is just a rubbish. Good. Lu Wanwan stood downstairs, with moonlight shining on her bright and white face, with delicate contours, beautiful features, red lips and white teeth, bright eyes and white teeth. Lin Su's greedy eyes lingered on her face, and he reluctantly said goodbye to her, "Then I will go first. Be careful on the road." "Well, late, we must keep in touch in the future." Sure." As soon as Lin Su's car drove away, the smile on Lu Wanwan's lips disappeared immediately, and his brows were deeply impatient. Being a White Lotus is really a technical job. What Lin Su said, she almost vomited. When Lu Wanwan turned around and was about to go upstairs, the man standing at the elevator entrance looked at her coldly. She was shocked by the sudden appearance of Shen Yi. She didn't even know when he stood here. Could he listen to the conversation between her and Lin Su just now? The off-white sweater is very self-cultivating on a man. He is also wearing cotton mopping on his feet. He has a black garbage bag in his hand. He should have gone downstairs to take out the garbage. In fact, the conversation between her and Lin Su was better heard by Shen Yi. "I beg Shen Yi to divorce her outright by Lianhua." However, Lu Wanwan's eyebrows were pounding when Shen Yi's icy eyes revealed a frenzied look. Before she made Shen Yi angry, this person looked at her silently, and then used his own method to clean up her. Forced her to beg for mercy. Lu Wanwan bit his scalp to greet him, made an affectionate gesture, took his arm, and smiled brightly. "Why did you come down? Did you come downstairs to pick me up?" The man looked at her motionlessly, his pupils were pitch black, staring at her with fury in his heart. He whispered, "I'm down to throw the trash." Lu Wanwan didn't have a job. He returned home from the company and didn't see her. He called and didn't answer the phone. After checking it, he found out that she had gone out to see her old classmates. She smiles beautifully, but how can she smile so brilliantly at that man? Shen Yi was a little bit distressed. It was really difficult to handle. She must be unhappy to lock her up, but he has also indulged her little temper for a long time, and his patience has reached the limit. It seems that she can only keep her with the jewelry and money she likes. With these, she should have no intention of looking at others. Shen Yi has always felt that his attitude towards this marriage is also indifferent, and his stubbornly possessive desire for Lu Wanwan is just because she is his wife, but now it seems to be different. He was really bored, and there were other men standing beside Lu Wanwan. Lu Wanwan felt that Shen Yi's low eyebrows and pleasing appearance looked really good, as if he was a very good child. When she was in love, this person had no opinion on all the things she had arranged. She was obedient and sensible. At that time, she didn't know that the soft and waxy Shen Yi was actually a sesame-filled glutinous rice ball. "A heart is black. Where did you go today?" he asked. Lu Wanwan's eyes curled up. "I went out to meet an old friend." She pouted, and then said, "He is still our former classmate, and now he has his own company. They drive only limited edition Rolls-Royce, unlike our car. I don't even hear the brand." "I've heard it, but it doesn't look good." Shen Yi listened to her silently and pressed the elevator. Lu Wanwan frowned, with a disgusting expression. "I wanted to replace the car a long time ago. Your car will lose face when you drive out. I don't want to sit. But at your current salary, you can't change the car. I knew it was. I shouldn't marry you." These words circled her mouth a few times and swallowed them back. Because Shen Yi's eyes can almost freeze people to death. Lu Wanwan is now following the path of the original owner, and there is absolutely no collapse. Thinking about it this way, she thinks that the day when she can divorce Shen Yi should not be far away. Back home, Lu Wanwan found that Shen Yi had already prepared dinner. The food is still steaming, full of color, fragrance, and taste. Lu Wanwan's stomach was empty and she was already hungry. She sat down and consciously pushed the empty bowl in front of Shen Yi, naturally instructing him, "Help me serve half a bowl of rice." Needless to say, Shen Yi will take the initiative to do all these things well. All the housework in this family is done by him alone. Lu Wanwan is really a young lady who doesn't touch the sun with her fingers. She doesn't need to do anything. He just needs to sit lazily on the sofa after eating. Just watching TV. If life can go on like this, she has no opinion. Can't stand Shen Yi is a little sick, and all the thoughts in his mind are not understandable by normal people. Inexplicably, she would be locked up by this disease. Lu Wanwan, who has had 2 failed lessons, discovered that Shen Yi, Xiao Bing Jiao, looks like an obedient baby. In fact, he has a bad stomach, and he arranges everything for her, no matter how big or small she is. Intervene, I guess there is a point to raise her abolition. Look, how deep your mind is. Lu Wanwan leaned back on the sofa and watched the TV for a while. The man in the kitchen washed the dishes and wiped his hands and came out, sitting directly beside her, with a pair of beautiful hands gently resting on her legs. The fingers are white and the joints are distinct. Lu Wanwan raised his head slightly, his gaze hit his chin, and the man raised his hand and pressed her small head against his neck. His voice was hoarse and his voice was deep. "Repose for a while." The man's neck is white, and his body has a unique fragrance. Lu Wanwan stiffened, trying to get up from him, but he was pressed back just as soon as he moved. Looking at the thin and weak man, the strength is really great. She leaned in his arms confessing her fate and yawned, "I want to watch The King of Cold is Not Easy, Eggplant Station." "Okay." Shen Yiyin transferred to the eggplant table. Lu Wanwan just wanted to feel sick and sick Shen Yi. This man is just a little stodgy. He never watches TV, doesn't chase dramas, variety shows, or celebrities. He is not even interested in the sports channel, financial channel that men love. Lu Wanwan looked very fascinated. She didn't even know it. She slackened and lay softly in his arms, like a lazy and harmless kitten. The man's eyes had long shifted from the TV to her body, and the soft light shone on her clean and white face. The woman in his arms looked calm and her apple was rolling. He couldn't help but lifted her chin with his fingers. Take a bite on the soft lips. With a hiss, Lu Wanwan's mouth was a little bit painful when he was bitten by him, and she suddenly recovered. She avoided her face, her expression unnatural. I'm going to take a bath, I'm so sleepy. Shen Yi released the shackles on her and turned off the TV. By the way, go. After taking a shower and coming out of the bathroom, the man took out the delicately packaged small gift box from the drawer and handed it to her. Open it and see if you like it or not. Lu Wanwan opened the box ignorantly, and a ruby necklace lay quietly in it. The light of the gem almost blinded her. Where did Shen Yi get the money? A ruby as big as a pigeon egg. This won't be the one that Shen Yi bought a fake to make her happy. Lu Wanwan took the necklace and pretended to be very happy. Ah! It's so beautiful. I like big sparkling gems. She blinked at Shen Yi, and then asked, how much did this necklace cost you? What? Shen Yi's salary card is still in her hand, and Lu Wanwan still feels that Shen Yi has bought a fake gemstone necklace to coax her. After some consideration, Shen Yi replied faintly, it didn't cost much. He didn't think there was any problem with this answer. It was taken by him at an auction last year for 60 million yuan. At first, he felt that this necklace matched her very well, but she didn't seem to like it very much at that time. After being reminded by Li Xing today, he remembered the existence of this necklace. Lu Wanwan looked at him, and then asked, how much is it? The corners of the man's lips were pressed into a straight line, as if he didn't want to answer her question very much. Shen Yi really didn't know what to say. He had already set up a company when he was in college, but Lu Wanwan didn't care much about him at that time, and he never asked about him. A few months ago, his grandfather came to the door, and the old tearfully said that he was sorry. All these years have caused him a lot of hardship. Shen Yi didn't even say anything. His grandfather had already given him the shares that belonged to him in the Shen family. Even if he didn't return to Shen's house, Shen Yi could still get tens of millions. After thinking for a while, he uttered, I will buy you better in the future. Lu Wanwan was relieved after hearing what he said. As expected, it was fake. It's okay to fake it. If the necklace is real, she will be frightened out of illness instead. In 6 months, the hero Shen Yi should return to the Shen family, the first wealthy family in the capital. As the eldest grandson, coupled with his outstanding talents, he was the master of the Shen family within 2 years. Therefore, Lu Wanwan must complete a series of deaths within these 6 months. She wants to be a pure coquettish bitch, let Shen Yi abandon her like a shoe. The author has something to say, Yi is not reborn. Lu Wanwan didn't want to mention it again. Okay. Shen Yi refused to let her go out to work, then she would spend his money desperately. Li Xing still knows a little bit about Shen Yi, and he also knows that this person looks cold and indifferent, but he is very persistent when it comes to Lu Wanwan. Li Xing and the others have grown up in a compound since they were young. How can you not see who Lu Wanwan was before? She is a luxurious and indulgent money worshipper, secular and self-interested. Nouveau riche like the Lu family is really nothing in several high-class families. When he was in college before, Li Xing could see that Lu Wanwan liked to show off too much. Shen Yi knew it too, but he didn't say anything, instead indulging her step by step to become what she is today. However, Li Xing is still not very optimistic about their marriage. Now Shen Yi has returned to the Shen family, the eldest son and grandson, and there is only one grumpy brother in the rebellious period, which poses no threat to him at all. How can someone like Liu Wanwan survive among the rich is still a question. Shen Yi probably didn't want to see him staying here now. He glanced over several times with cold eyes, and Li Xing smiled, "I'll go out for lunch first." He didn't forget to help them close the office door before leaving. Liu Wanwan didn't plan to stay in Shen Yi's office for a long time. As soon as he planned to leave, Shen Yi grabbed his finger. The man's voice was cold and he asked, "Are you going home?" Liu Wanwan coughed twice and said, "No, I am going to see the new bags and clothes in the mall with my little sisters. Last time I saw the 100,000 bags and I was not willing to buy them. I must buy them today." Shen Yi lowered his eyes and gently squeezed her finger, "Can you stay with me for 2 hours today? I will get off work soon." The man pursed his lips, his expression was gentle, and his voice was as clear as ever. Shen Yi is afraid that she will be in pain when she goes out to spend money? Liu Wanwan pretended to be embarrassed, and said, "But, if you don't buy it today, you may lose that bag tomorrow." Shen Yi released her finger, walked to the desk, opened the drawer, picked a card from it, and handed it to her hand, "Take it, the money inside should be enough for you to spend a while. Buy whatever you like." After a pause, he pursed his lips, and added, "If you have no money, tell me." Liu Wanwan held the card, "Where did you get this money?" Shen Yi obediently replied, "The last project, the bonus. Money doesn't make a bastard." Since Shen Yi was so keen on giving her money, Liu Wanwan accepted it very rudely. "Okay then." Shen Yi chuckled lightly, and the beautiful and cold facial features seemed to come alive. Liu Wanwan didn't sleep well last night. He nestled on the sofa and read fashion magazines for a while, and slowly narrowed his eyes. Finally, he was so sleepy that he couldn't open his eyes. His little head was knocked on the man's shoulder and he fell asleep. Ns. The small face was red and white, and the cherry mouth opened slightly. The sweater on her body was slightly messy, and the neck was snow white. Down this line, the collarbone was also white and tender, and the soft hair exuded the smell of jasmine. Liu Wanwan also slept too well. He was completely unguarded against the man beside him. He also disliked the uncomfortable posture. He arched in his arms, found a suitable position, and went back to sleep. Under the soft light, Shen Yi's cold face was like a bright moon in the sky. The man looked at the woman in his arms with nostalgia, his fingers brushed her cheeks, his lips turned up slightly. He didn't know what was wrong with him, he didn't like this wife so much before, but Liu these days late night seems exceptionally delicious. The man didn't hold back, lowered his head and secretly took a small bite on her collarbone. Shen Yi looked at her white tender spot with his own traces, smiled satisfied, and after reminiscing about her sweet taste, he narrowed his eyes with satisfaction. Liu Wanwan had a good night's sleep. When she woke up, she found herself lying on Shen Yi's lap. She languidly got up from him and stretched out, still feeling a little sleepy. Shen Yi raised her hand, she shrank subconsciously, "What's the matter?" He said quietly, "The sweater neckline has slipped down." "Oh, thank you." Liu Wanwan later realized that Shen Yi had arranged his clothes, thinking that Shen Yi was quite a gentleman. These days she found that Shen Yi was really very regular, even if she saw her disheveled appearance and her eyelids were not moved. "Yes, seriously." She glanced at the clock on the wall and said, "Are you off work?" "It's down." "Oh. Are we going home now?" Shen Yi was silent for a moment and replied, "I will eat out tonight." Afraid that she would be unhappy, Shen Yi continued, "Gu Xing and the others said that they have not seen you for a long time and want to have dinner with you." "Oh, where to eat?" "Bamboo Garden." Liu Wanwan vaguely remembered that the place seemed to be a private restaurant opened by Li Xing. It was located in a quiet courtyard. It was low-key and luxurious, and money might not even be available for reservation. In the 10 years that Lu Wanwan was locked up in the apartment for the first time, all she could see was Shen Yi's friends. The eyes of the proud children looked at her with sympathy, but there was nothing to help her. The meaning of. After getting off the office building, Li Xing sat in the car early and waited for the two of them. He smiled and said, "Brother Yi, Fu Chenghui and Zhao Shihu have already arrived in Zuyuan. Let's go straight to it. These two people are both famous noble sons in the capital." The reason why the original owner did not immediately divorce Shen Yi was probably because he wanted to get in touch with the proud sons of these days. With sharp eyes, Lu Wanwan recognized that the car Li Xing was driving seemed to be the one before Shen Yi. She poked Shen Yi in the arm and asked, "Did you change the car with him?" Shen Yi nodded, "Well, it's changed." He calmly explained with Lu Wanwan, "He just happened to like my car, so I changed it with him." Lu Wanwan thought there was something weird, but couldn't think of a clue. It was windy outside, and Shen Yi took off his coat and put it on her. Looking at the look of frowning and contemplating, he couldn't help but smile. "Don't you dislike my car?" "That's why I agreed." In fact, Shen Yi didn't lie either. Li Xing has coveted his car for a long time, and replaced him with a very ordinary Porsche. Shen Yi had never thought that Lu Wanwan was so cute before. Although she kept talking about the nameplate all day long, she didn't seem to recognize a few brands, even the license plates. She seems to recognize only a few of the more famous popular brands. After about 20 minutes drive, 3 people arrived at the bamboo garden. The environment is quiet, with 2 red lanterns hanging in front of the gate. The atmosphere in the box was quiet. Fu Chenghui and Zhao Shihu were holding cigarettes in their hands, and the 2 outstanding men sitting in front of them could hardly be moved. Lu Wanwan remembered that Zhao Shihu hated her very much. The last 2 times after wearing the book, it was clear that she had nothing to do with him, and she didn't act as a demon, but every time Zhao Shihu saw her, she would sarcastically say that she is a nouveau riche. Lu Wanwan also disliked Zhao Shihu, who looked like, "I am the most powerful and I am the richest." The menu is in Shen Yi's hands. He didn't even ask Lu Wanwan and ordered the dishes. Zhao Shihu sat opposite her, with a pair of amorous peach eyes, looking at her with a smile. "Miss Lu is very busy these days." Lu Wanwan said twice in his heart, "Zhao Shihu is absolutely nothing good to say next. This person used to like yin and yang to stab her strangely, saying that Miss Lu is really a busy person who I have seen eating, drinking and having fun to the extreme." This time she didn't have a good face to Shen Yi, and she didn't get used to his friends anymore. Lu Wanwan held Shen Yi affectionately, and gave Zhao Shihu a pretentious look, and he could kill others in a greasy tone. "Ashi, how can you call me Miss Lu? I am Mrs. Shen now. How old are you?" "No matter how old I am, I will never forget this level, forgetting that I have married Yi." Zhao Shihu's face was hard to look at with the naked eye. Lu Wan's evening dress sighed pretentiously, "I'm really busy. You men may not understand it. I am tired of visiting the new items in the luxury store." While talking, the dishes are ready. Shen Yi sat aside and rarely spoke from beginning to end, just silently picking up vegetables for her, for fear that she would be hungry. "My sister-in-law is really getting more and more beautiful." It was Fu Chenghui who said this. Even though he said that, he didn't have much respect in his eyes, and it was more of shame. This group of heavenly prides have never put ordinary people in their eyes. Lu Wanwan didn't know if Shen Yi could see Miss Lu's face clearly, but the group of friends around him absolutely knew. She smiled and said, "Thank you." Fu Chenghui hadn't really looked at her before that, a woman who loved vanity and had no brains. When I saw it today, it seemed that she was quiet a lot. Lu Wanwan had an empty stomach and felt hungry a long time ago. She didn't bother to look at other people's faces and just bury her head in eating vegetables, while Shen Yi seemed to enjoy the pleasure of feeding her, and kept filling her bowl with vegetables. Both Fu Chenghui and Zhao Shihu drank some wine, but Shen Yi didn't touch it with a sip. Liu Wanwan, who has been with Shen Yi for 2 lifetimes, thinks he knows Shen Yi well. This person does not drink, does not smoke, does not gamble, is clean, and has no bad habits, except that his psychology is abnormal. Everything is perfect. Liu Wanwan stopped his chopsticks, tugged Shen Yi's sleeve, and asked, "Where is the bathroom? I want to go to the bathroom." Shen Yi took her hand and replied quietly, "I will take you over. The environment in the bamboo garden is a bit complicated. If you are unfamiliar, you may get lost." Liu Wanwan silently took his hand out of his palm, and the man beside him pretended that nothing happened, and then firmly clasped her 5 fingers again. After passing 2 corridors, turning a turn, Liu Wanwan saw the sign of the bathroom from afar. As soon as the two walked over, they ran into a middle-aged woman in luxurious clothes around the corner. The woman seemed to recognize Shen Yi and smiled contemptuously. She opened her mouth and made a harsh voice. Her voice sounded very acrid and her tone was also very mean. She said to her friends around her in a weird manner, "What's the matter with Zuyuan? Why is it now? Can both cats and dogs come in?" Liu Wanwan recognized this woman at a glance. This was Shen Yi's aunt. Gee! She couldn't help but cast a glance at Shen Yi, and found that the man beside her was unchanging and calm, as if the person being scolded was not him. Liu Wanwan couldn't help but sigh. Shen Yi's endurance is really good, making people feel scared. Shen Yi's perverted restraint and patience, Liu Wanwan had seen it a long time ago. That was what happened after the first marriage in her first life, and she couldn't bear it even if she couldn't go out for only half a month. Pretending to be sick and deceived him, stole his own documents, slipped away from the hospital smoothly, went to the law firm to find a lawyer, and planned to sue for divorce. Shen Yi suddenly appeared in the office, with a kind eyebrow and a small smile. She was terrified by the smile. Liu Wanwan was caught and went back, his wrists were flushed red by him, his brows were violent, his eyes were sharp as a knife, but he spoke softly and slowly, and was gentle and considerate. His thin fingers brushed her cheeks lightly, looked at the shivering woman on the bed, chuckled, and sighed, "What am I afraid of? I won't eat you again, am I?" Liu Wanwan was timid at the time, thinking that the man in front of her was going to eat her raw. She was immediately scared and crying. Tears were streaming down, and the drops of water fell down like broken pearls. The cry was quite pitiful. Inexplicably, she felt that the man's eyes looked at her more excited. He gently wiped away the tear marks on the woman's face with his fingertips, pretending to be a pity, "I'm heartbroken for crying late and late." She was stunned, looking at him with red eyes, and then she heard the man say casually, "But the punishment still needs to be punished. The author has something to say, late. You are so heartbroken, you have to punish me, you say a hammer. Yi, I just want to use the excuse to punish you to do shameful things with you. Yi, my wife is cute, and I am also very good. Late night, cute is my and he puts it." Liu Wanwan didn't notice the man behind him, and continued to ask in a low voice, "Lawyer Feng, I heard that you never lost the divorce lawsuit in your hand, right? She is just looking for a lawyer to maintain the original master's design. Miss Liu is not only extravagant, provoking, vain and extravagant. Miss Liu in the original book wanted to divorce Shen Yi early in an attempt to divide his property. Miss Liu, did your husband cheat?" Liu Wanwan said seriously, "No." "Then he has domestic violence against you." "Nor." The lawyer on the other end of the phone pondered for a moment, and then hesitated to reply, "In this case, it is a bit troublesome to prosecute for divorce. Even if it is successful, you will not get much benefit in the division of property." The lawyer immediately said, "If you have your husband cheating on domestic violence or other things that harm your physical and mental health, we will have more advantages. And I want to ask when you plan to sue for divorce." Liu Wanwan chuckled, "It's not in a hurry, I'll just ask first and make some preparations." She waited for Shen Yi to take the initiative. After thanking him, Lu Wanwan hung up the phone and sat on the sofa with his bare feet cross-legged, wringing his eyebrows, thinking hard. She felt that the vanity she had deliberately expressed in the past few days did not have much effect, and Shen Yi seemed to be indifferent to anything. This makes her feel worried. Shen Yi stood at the top of the stairs for a while. The man's face was a little pale, his lips were light, he blinked, and suddenly a chuckle overflowed from his throat. It's just that the smile sounds unprovoked, which makes people feel terrible. The whitish moonlight shone on the man's shoulders, and his skin became whiter, and there was a bit of distortion in the depths of his eyes, but for a moment, those eyes returned to their usual tranquility. When I was in high school, I just felt that she agreed to her pursuit with a good idea, and marriage was a matter of course. Originally, he had a cold attitude towards Lu Wanwan and this marriage, since she came back from the Lu family. The vivid energy attracted him deeply. Shen Yi has never had such a deep bondage, and wants to trap her in her own world forever. Shen Yi lifted his chin slightly, his lips rose, and his face smiled sharply. 10 minutes later, the man lifted his steps, walked to the door, and unscrewed the door. Lu Wanwan looked at him. You are back. Shen Yi responded with a low voice, yes. Seeing Lu Wanwan barefoot, he bent down and gave her a pair of slippers, and whispered, put your shoes on. After Lu Wanwan put on his slippers, the man turned his head and went into the kitchen to prepare dinner. She looked at his back, always feeling that something was wrong with him tonight, but his expression seemed to be normal. It's just that Lu Wanwan was unusually sensitive to Shen Yi's emotions, and she felt that Shen Yi seemed to be sulking. She thought silently that this person might be angry in the company. Shen Yi put down his chopsticks without taking 2 bites of dinner, looked at her and said, I'm going to the study, and I'll be out to clean up the dishes and chopsticks in a while. Lu Wanwan actually wanted to say no, but she swallowed it back when she said it. She must now fully carry forward the lazy and vanity nature of the original owner. So she really sat and didn't move. Lu Wanwan looked at her cell phone for a while and became sleepy. It was already 9 o'clock in the evening, and she went back to the room to sleep while yawning. The quilt has just been tanned this morning, and you can smell the smell of the sun when buried in it. The air conditioner in the room was turned on a bit high. Not long after Lu Wanwan went to bed, his white and tender face was soaked with powder, and his tender feet were sticking out of the quilt. She felt getting hotter and hotter, the quilt seemed to be lifted, her pajamas were also taken off unknowingly, her slender waist was pulled away, and the man's palm was a little cold, she involuntarily shrank. Lu Wanwan opened his eyes in a daze, and stared at the man in front of him in a daze. Shen Yi's hands are very beautiful, thin and white, with distinct bones. He clasped her hands together and pressed them vigorously on the top of his head, looking at her unblinkingly with dark eyes. Before Lu Wanwan could react, the man suddenly leaned down, his cold lips pressed against the back of her snow-white neck, slowly tasting her taste. Lu Wanwan's face became whiter and paler, and his black hair was scattered randomly on his white back. The familiar feeling of fear in his heart surged, and he smiled hard, "Can you let go of my hand first?" Unexpectedly, Shen Yi let go of her obediently, raising his lips and chuckles, "Okay." Lu Wanwan's tight heartstrings loosened a little, and his eyes were red from the fright just now by his terrifying aura. Shen Yi didn't care much about anything most of the time, and he never seemed to be angry, but Lu Wanwan had the privilege of seeing him really getting angry, and never wanted to see him again. She felt that Shen Yi was in a bad mood, even if he was smiling just now, he was still very obedient. The lights in the room were all turned off by him, and the heavy curtains were tightened tightly, making it difficult for the moonlight outside the window to penetrate. The man knelt down on her waist, looked at her condescendingly, wrapped her waist with one hand, and lifted her up. He lowered his head, and the tip of his teeth took a bite on her white tender and sweet back neck. "Some are heavy, almost bitten." He sighed softly, and then gently sucked the water droplets that overflowed from the corner of Lu Wanwan's eyes. Divorce? Ah! Shen Yi put her down after having kissed enough, looked at her trembling body, chuckled, and slowly said, "What is shaking? Sleep." The next day, Lu Wanwan received a call from the monitor in high school, asking her and Shen Yi to attend the classmates' gathering tomorrow night. She thought about it for a moment, then agreed. She was in class 11 in high school. Most of the worst classes were illiterate rich second generations. Miss Lu was not very popular in the class at the beginning. She was beautiful and was jealous of her peers. It is a nouveau riche, with a strong rural atmosphere, in the eyes of those rich people with noble family background, it is just a bit of stinky money dumplings. After hanging up the phone, Lu Wanwan sent a text message to Shen Yi about the classmate reunion. 2 minutes later, the phone jingled, "Okay." It was the day of the party in a blink of an eye. Classmates always want to wear bright and beautiful. Lu Wanwan chose a black suspender dress. Her skin is white, and the black skirt matches her complexion very well, which outlines her exquisite figure very well. Shen Yi looked at her collarbone, lowered his eyes darkened, he spoke and said slowly, "It's cold, let's add a coat." Lu Wanwan didn't, and blinked at him innocently, "It looks good when I wear it this way. I must be the most beautiful one tonight. I can't be compared by them. I have to say that the little black dress suits her very well, charming and charming." Shen Yi paused, still took a small coat from the closet, "It looks good if you wear it." Lu Wanwan pretended not to see, did not pick up the clothes he handed over. Instead, he opened the drawer in front of the dressing cabinet and took out the ruby necklace that Shen Yi had given her before, showing a glamorous look to the man behind him. "Smile, you help me put it on, I'll wait for the day to compare with them. Suddenly kill them." Shen Yi looked down at the back of her jade white neck. The jasmine fragrance from her penetrated the tip of his nose, alluring. He held his breath and silently put a necklace on her. Lu Wanwan had a purpose. There must be people with glaring eyes at the classmates who could see that there was a fake necklace on her neck. Then she would be able to quarrel with Shen Yi justifiably, turning upside down and annoying him. Shen Yi drove the Porsche who had exchanged with Li Xing. Lu Wanwan recognized the brand, and stood at the front of the car for a long while, then said, "This car is much more pleasing to the eye than the previous broken car." Shen Yi. He held back a laugh without saying anything. In fact, his previous car was a very low-key Audil, not the most expensive top luxury car, probably only worth 20 million. In winter, there is a lot of fog when talking. After getting off the bus, there happened to be a small street vendor selling snacks on the street, which was steaming and full of aroma. Shen Yi turned his face and asked softly, "Do you want to buy a copy, so you can cushion your stomach first?" Lu Wanwan pretended to be contemptuous and said, "I don't want to eat that kind of food. It's not clean and not good." "Okay, let's go in." Shen Yi couldn't help but lifted his lips, but for a moment, he suppressed the faint smile back, and only then did he clearly see her swallowing. Interesting. It's getting more and more interesting late in the evening. The party is booked in the most famous restaurant in the capital, which is also the kind that can't be booked by the rich. Lu Wanwan and Shen Yi entered arm in arm, almost everyone at the table was already there. Several women have been staring at the necklace on her neck, their eyes have been completely attracted by this dazzling ruby. After 3 rounds of drinking, someone finally couldn't help it. "Late night, I really envy you and Shen Yi's love, from campus to wedding dress is really beautiful." Yes, late, I thought you liked a rich man like Zhao Shihu. I heard that Shen Yi is now working in a small company. He is too wronged. My husband's newly opened company is currently lacking a director. If you don't mind, I will let my husband give him a convenience and drop by. Talking about the 2 daughters of the Sui family. Shen Yi didn't say a word the whole time. Lu Wanwan smiled, I really don't feel wronged at all, and Yi treats me very well, you see. She continued, this necklace was bought by Yi, you must all know, right? Su and the others stared at the necklace for a long time. At first she thought it was a fake. When Lu Wanwan approached, she looked at it and found that it didn't look like a fake. She was once seen at an auction, and was finally photographed by an upstart who did not show up for 60 million yuan. He heard that he was going to give it to his wife. Su didn't believe that Lu Wanwan was a genuine product. She stabbed, we really don't have any. After all, we don't bother to wear fakes. I saw at the door just now that they were coming out of a Porsche. Lu Wanwan, everyone is a classmate, you really don't need to be like this, swollen face to fill a fat man. Very good. Lu Wanwan wanted this effect. She turned her face, looking at Shen Yi pitifully with Yin Grun's eyes, tugging at his sleeve, her eyes flushed, as if she was very angry. He accidentally smashed the music box with diamonds on the table. Su is happy to watch her make a fool of herself, this is not an ordinary decoration. The designer is the wife of the owner of this restaurant. If you annoy the owner, don't think about coming again in the future. They can't get in, and they can't get in here if they have money. After so many years, Lu Wanwan still hasn't grown so much, and Kong has a long face. Even though the voice of their discussion was small, it still passed into Shen Yi's ears. His eyes turned cold, he raised his hand, touched Lu Wanwan's face pity, and comforted her softly, don't be afraid. After a short silence, he added another sentence, how many do you want to fall? Lu Wanwan was a little confused. The author has something to say, Yi, don't be afraid, my husband will avenge you. Late, good see you tomorrow. Shen Yi, don't speak big words, this handicraft is really something you can't afford. If you fall a few more, you may have to pay your salary for half a year. Su said not very politely, and looked at him coldly. Shen Yi didn't move his eyelids, and didn't pay attention to her from the beginning to the end. He clasped Lu Wanwan's fingers tightly, staring at her with eyesight, and seemed not to be joking, looking at her seriously, and asked, would you like to continue falling? Lu Wanwan. Pursing the corners of her lips, she pretended to snorted twice, forget it, don't fall. I'm so angry that I don't have the energy to let go. She was afraid of falling a few more times and wanted to throw away all of Shen Yi's savings. Oh, what are you talking about? In a big tone, as if you are rich. I drove an ordinary car and wore fakes. This vanity is the same as before. It's just a woman who can pay for it. The man hiding in the corner whispered, thinking that no one would hear it. Shen Yi, I heard that Song Huaisheng has a very bad temper, and he also protects his wife. If he deliberately makes trouble here late at night, it will not end up if he annoys Mr. Song. The former class flower of the 11th class, the human voice. Sweet, with an oval face, very tender skin, clear eyes, and clean. This is the daughter of the Gu family, a scholarly family, and a good tutor. It was an accident that she was assigned to class 11 that year. If Lu Wanwan is a coquettish bitch, then Gu Sheng is simply the kind of silly, white, and sweet man who wants to pamper him when he sees it. After the divorce of the original owner and the male protagonist, Gu Sheng began to inquire about Shen Yi, and the Shen family and Gu family had another intention to marry them, and they tried their best to bring them together. Oh, right. Lu Wanwan almost forgot. The old man of the Shen family was very dissatisfied with the original owner. He felt that she had become vulgar and worshipped money. So before she and Shen Yi divorced, he secretly looked for her. She got her out of millions. Miss Lu's eyelids were shallow, and she didn't even ask what kind of family the Shen family was. Shen Yi raised his eyelids, smiled, and said, Song Huaisheng. While they were talking, a sound suddenly came from the entrance of the restaurant, a slender man in a suit and leather shoes slowly approaching their table. Someone with sharp eyes had already recognized Song Huaisheng, and the person next to him was whispering. Look at how Lu Wanwan ends now. Song Huaisheng is famous for beloving his wife. If he sees his wife's handicrafts being broken, he will definitely lose his temper. Master Song is really angry. I see, Lu Wanwan and Shen Yi don't even think about going out tonight. The nouveau riche and the poor are embarrassed to come together. Song Huaisheng happened to be there tonight, so he came over to have a look when he heard the noise here. He narrowed his eyes slightly, raised his brows, curled his lips and chuckled, Mr. Shen. Shen Yi pointed to the debris on the ground, his face was faint, and said, Sorry, my wife had no intention of breaking the things in your store. You tell me the price, and I will transfer the money to you. Song Huaisheng and Shen Yi have met 2 or 3 times before, and their companies have also had commercial cooperation. He had heard of Shen Yi getting married a long time ago, but he had never seen his wife. He looked at the woman beside Shen Yi. Although the facial features were beautiful, they revealed a childish and innocent aura. Song Huaisheng smiled generously, not gentle like him, and said, It doesn't matter, it's broken when it's broken, it's not worth a lot of money, it's good if Mrs. Shen doesn't hurt her hand. For a while, the people over the table couldn't understand what was going on. Lu Wanwan couldn't understand. Shen Yi and Song Huaisheng had known each other a long time ago. How could this young Master Song, who had a higher vision than the sky, be so polite to Shen Yi? After such a show, everyone was not thinking about eating dinner, they were all speculating about the relationship between Shen Yi and Song Huaisheng. Su Sakai, who was still going to watch a good show, turned pale, and Gu Sheng, who was standing beside him, didn't look good. He bit his lower lip and was unwilling. Shen Yi ignored everyone, took Lu Wanwan's hand to take her out, and whispered, Wait for me first, I'll be back soon. Where did you go? Shen Yi didn't answer her, locked the car door, turned and left. Lu Wanwan waited for him in the car for 15 minutes before the man returned. The moment the car door opened, the air conditioning from outside swarmed in. The cold breath on Shen Yi's body seemed to carry a trace of blood. Lu Wanwan couldn't help but glanced at him more. His face was white, his fingers were clean, his clothes were spotless, and he couldn't see any flaws at all. She asked again, What did you do just now? Hand washing. Oh. Shen Yi lied to her, he hadn't done it himself for a long time. Just when he got out of the garage, Song Huaisheng had already helped him bring people over. Shen Yi looked at the man lying on the ground with cold eyes. He lifted his feet and pressed black leather shoes on the man's face mercilessly. He squatted down, grabbed the man's hair, and looked at him with a sneer, You repeat what he just said at the dinner table. Shen Yi. Don't go too far, let go of me. Not this sentence. He smiled and kicked again. The people on the ground were already bruised and swollen. Remember, what you said. What's the matter? Lu Wanwan was originally the kind of woman who can be paid for. She is greedy for vanity. Did you know it on the first day? Haha. Shen Yi made people half dead, and then threw them on the ground like trash. He took a handkerchief out of his pocket, wiped the blood on his fingers clean, and walked away. Lu Wanwan wanted to ask more clearly what is the relationship between him and Song Huaisheng? Do you know young Master Song Xiao? There have been several fate. Why is he so polite to you? Shen Yi replied, I have a little friendship with his brother. Oh, is it just that? In fact, Shen Yi had never deliberately concealed his wealth. As long as Lu Wanwan was more concerned about his affairs, he would find that he was not as poor as she thought. Shen's shares, as well as his own company. He has long been worthy. On the way home, Lu Wanwan's cell phone rang once, and it was a call from Lawyer Feng. She subconsciously wanted to stop the phone, and she must not let Shen Yi know about her divorce. This man has always been ruthless, indifferent to her tears. She didn't know where she had the courage that time, so she even dared to threaten him, saying that she would either divorce or die. Shen Yi opened the door very talkatively and took her to the Civil Affairs Bureau in person. With a light smile on his eyebrows, he returned all the documents in his hand and said with a smile, "Go in." Lu Wanwan was really stupid at that time, and tremblingly received his ID card and marriage certificate from him, and ran to the divorce office of the Civil Affairs Bureau. Before the threshold was reached, her wrist was pulled vigorously by the man behind her. Shen Yi looked at her with a smile and said, "You really want to go in? I'm sorry for you so late." Lu Wanwan was almost killed by him on the bed that time. His hand grasped her ankle and wrapped it around his waist. Shen Yi bit her ear and whispered softly, "Follow this again next time. If you make a mistake, I will treat you." Lu Wanwan's breathing was stagnant, his lips turned pale, he smiled, and said, "Break your legs. I'm so squeamish in the evening, and I'm afraid of pain, I will definitely cry." Lu Wanwan has learned to be smart, so he can do big things without saying anything. Shen Yi glanced at her mobile phone, smiling but not smiling, and said, "Why don't you answer the phone?" Lu Wanwan grabbed his attention and hung up the phone calmly, "Do I have to answer when he calls? It seems that I don't have any arrogance at all, so I don't bother to answer it." She has always been so unreasonable to make trouble, Shen Yi should not doubt it. Every night is right. As soon as the voice fell, Lu Wanwan's cell phone rang again. Attorney Feng should have something important to tell her, otherwise the phone calls would not come one after another. Lu Wanwan bit the bullet and connected the phone, preemptively, "Lu Zozi, are you going to die? Don't disturb my two-person world with your brother-in-law, I'll hang up." Attorney Feng didn't even have a chance to speak, and he was a little confused on the phone. Shen Yi bent his eyes and asked meaningfully, "Is it your brother?" When Lu Wanwan lied, his face blushed, and he replied stiffly, "Well, it's him." Shen Yi didn't ask much, which made Lu Wanwan relieved. Snow began to float in the sky, and a thin layer of frost and snow has been covered on the railings. From a distance, it has become a white world. When Lu Wanwan shivered coldly when he got out of the car, Shen Yi took off his suit and put it on her shoulders. After returning home, Lu Wanwan didn't even change her clothes. She was still wearing that thin little black dress. There were several new bags on the coffee table. She smiled and said, "I went shopping with Zhao Zhao 2 days ago. I bought more than a dozen bags in one go, which cost more than 300,000 yuan, and they were delivered to my home today." The light above her head poured on her white body, her waist was slender, and her legs were slender. His suit slipped from her shoulders and fell to the ground, revealing her neat figure. Lu Wanwan's cheeks are bright and pink, and her expression is delicate. Shen Yi picked up the suit jacket on the ground. The man squeezed her white wrist, played with it carefully, and slowly said, "These bags are all pretty." Lu Wanwan swallowed and strengthened his tone, "I spent a full 300,000. That's 300,000. It was defeated in one day, can Shen Yi bear it?" The man raised his eyes, calmly, looked at her seriously and said, "Okay, I understand." After a long silence, he continued, "The money is not enough, right? There are still 2 cards in the drawer of the bedside table. You can use them to swipe them and have fun." Lu Wanwan thought blankly, Shen Yi didn't seem to be the poor little pitiful anymore. Shen Yi looked down at her dazed expression, and touched her head affectionately, "Don't you like my money? Is it good to give you everything?" When he said this, the tone was too gentle, and the ending was deliberately prolonged and sluggish. He couldn't hear the joy or anger, and the fear in her bones was hooked out again. Lu Wanwan smiled, tensed his back and held his arm stiffly, "Of course I like you." Shen Yi smiled softly when he heard the words, his beautiful eyes curled up. The author has something to say, Yi, it doesn't matter, who doesn't have a lot of bad money.